What's up y'all, MetalCritic here, and I've gotten to the point in Diablo where I'm willing to step away for a minute to make this video. And I gotta make this video fast before Blizzard nerfs whatever dungeon people are running now. RIP Ruins of Eridu. By the way, a little spoiler warning, the first part I'm going to cover in this video is the campaign. If you haven't finished the campaign yet and don't want to be spoiled on it, I'm going to try to set up those little things with the chapters with YouTube so you can kind of just click to the next one. If not, there should be like a link in the description to like click on the timestamp or something. It'll be fine. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the campaign. I found it really enjoyable while playing through, actually making an effort and paid attention to all the parts of the story, not skipping any of the dialogue or any of the cutscenes. I will say, despite this, there were several times where I felt like I missed some cutscene or other important piece of dialogue. For example, I never really felt like they explained why we needed to stop Lilith, or why working with another prime evil would have been better over Lilith. They never really said what would happen if Lilith won, unless I missed it. There were also like little blips of just lazy random writing that really just made me so angry. One of the worst examples being Donan and the way he was killed off. Donan was one of my favorite characters in the campaign. You kind of grow with him along with the campaign. After dealing with the death of his son, he comes along through with you, and he had a lot of personality. You get to go through his trauma with him in the swamp. And to have him just killed off like that, a man who's, you know, an old man who's been living in this world surrounded by demons for years, who's got magical powers of the Horadrim, to be in hell and know that he's in hell and then walk over to a random pillar of corpses and get poked and just bleed out, felt like such a dishonest, unjust way to end the character. It felt cheap, it felt unwarranted. Another little example was Neyrelle losing her arm. I know a lot of people hate Neyrelle and probably liked that scene, but it just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. I actually have a lot of frustration with the way it ended, with Neyrelle just taking the stone and writing you a letter, and then Lorath telling you that she asked us not to go after her, so we won't. She is a child. I don't care what this child wants. I don't care that this child asked us not to go after her. She is a child with a prime evil in a soul stone that she has taken, which is going to become a problem for us later. It will probably be explained in later seasons and later content release patches. It just felt incomplete, probably because it is incomplete, so it's hard to fully judge the ending now, but it felt like we were slighted a little bit. You also felt like you were fighting Elias for like 70% of the story instead of major demons. For instance, you fight Andariel and you fight Duriel, and they're kind of just like nothing. They're kind of just like a regular fight. Duriel just pops up out of nowhere. They mention him like once earlier, and then he just shows up. It didn't quite make sense. Despite these complaints, it was still very enjoyable, don't get me wrong. I thought there was great use and development of Mephisto. They really got across to me the feeling of working with a great evil you can't trust to attempt to stop another evil. But no one, like almost nobody, plays Diablo games for the story, so none of this truly matters. Let's talk about the actual game, you know, the one that starts once you beat the game. First thing we're going to talk about is the power systems. You gain power through several ways in Diablo, like any other Diablo. Items, then you've got some skill points. They've got Paragon points, glyphs, and Altars of Lilith. Skill points being levels 1 through 50, with Paragon points being levels 50 through 100. We're going to start off talking about the items. I have only ever played D2 as my other Diablo game, which has very different itemization from the way D4 runs, but I like the itemization. You can reroll stats on the items. There's different tiers of items and different rarities of items. Magic, rare, legendary, unique are the rarities, and then nothing, no modifier, sacred, and ancestral are the tiers. Think about sacred and ancestral like Warforging and Titan Forging if you've ever played World of Warcraft, which if you're playing Diablo, you've probably played World of Warcraft. There's some strange stuff with sacred, like it being on World Tier 4 really just doesn't make sense. Most ancestral items still aren't an upgrade, and having sacred be there just dilutes the loot pool unnecessarily. There's lots of RNG. For instance, if you want a good legendary power, you have to first have a legendary drop, it roll the correct power, and then have that power roll well. However, there are good ways to make it feel player controlled despite these layers of RNG, in my opinion. A good legendary power on a bad base is okay because you can just extract the legendary power, find a good base, and put it on there. You can help make good bases by taking a decent base and rerolling the stats. So while there is several layers of RNG, there's a lot of things the player can do to kind of customize gear the way they need it to work for them, and I think that feels good. Uniques also feel very good. Almost all the effects are cool, they feel special when they drop, and some of them really makes builds shine. Even though I've only gotten like the same 4 uniques, how do I keep getting the same exact 4? There's like 30. Other way you gain player power, you get skill points from levels 1 to 50, and the skill point trees are really cool. There's not much else to say about this. I leveled as a Necro and I never felt weak. The levels came at a good rate and all these points felt impactful. Every point I put on this board felt like it was doing something to increase my character's strength. There's lots of room for experimentation. The leveling process wasn't too difficult early on. You know, I want to encourage people to try your own ideas out. There's like no punishment. You can respec the whole tree for just some gold, and you can just sell items and make gold. It's not hard. I made my own blood build that I used until World Tier 4 when the game got more difficult, and then I kind of respec'd and looked at a guide to kind of refine some things as the system gets more complicated, especially once you start getting the Paragon points, which you'll get from level 50 to 100. This is a genius idea because of the way that Diablo leveling works, with the later half taking up a much more time than the earlier half. Getting power every 1/4 of a level is a great way to keep the player engaged while grinding out and knowing that at least a small bit of power is coming. These aren't as impactful per point as the skill tree points are on the skill tree, but you do get more than 200 Paragon points from 50 to 100 on top of some from Renowned and Altars of Lilith. The Paragon boards themselves are also really cool and customizable. The rare nodes and magic nodes are really awesome, and the legendary effects are super cool bonuses. Not to mention the glyph sockets. These boards can be a little overwhelming at first. When I got to the board, it was the first time that I had looked up a build just to kind of get an idea of what I was supposed to do. There is something to be said about certain classes like Barb. My friend has been following a Barb guide, skipping their legendary nodes on the boards a lot of the times, which doesn't feel too good, but I think when you're playing at a super optimized level, that's bound to happen in a couple cases. I'd mentioned glyphs before. Glyphs are also a player power gain on the Paragon board. These are things that you will just start to have drop for you as you play through the game and level up through the world tiers. They go on the Paragon board, glyph slots, and they provide cool power bonuses that you can level up through Nightmare dungeons. The glyphs themselves have to be leveled up through glyph XP, which only comes at the end of a Nightmare dungeon. Do the dungeon, get the XP for the glyph. It's that simple. They go on the glyph slots and they do different things by interacting with nodes around them. A cool way to influence and reward people for taking stat nodes that would otherwise be less impactful. For instance, this is just a dex node. This dex node would be pretty boring, but this dex node is providing the additional crit strike damage, which is very nice. The glyph allows these stat nodes to not just be stat nodes, but provide more extreme bonuses, especially as you level the glyph up. Another small way to gain a little bit of player power are the Altars of Lilith. Most just grant a small bonus like +5 to a stat or a non-useful effect like Max Obols, but some do grant Paragon points. These are basically required because they give player power on several hundred renown per zone. They kinda suck, to be honest. I don't consider them gameplay at all. Even if you discover all of them yourself and draw your own map, you'll still end up looking at that map every season while you ride around and click. They're not really unpleasant or actively unfun, they're just not gameplay, and I refuse to pretend they are. Speaking of renown, let's talk about the renown grind. Grinding Renown in each separate zone can reward you with 4 different things: a skill point, a potion slot upgrade, a max obol upgrade, or 4 Paragon points. There are several ways to get Renown: Altars of Lilith, which I've already talked about, strongholds, dungeons, side quests, discovering areas, and unlocking the waypoints. Starting with strongholds, these are fun. These are good. This is a good open world thing to do. These often have cool lore implications or class tie-ins. For instance, one has something druids can turn in to gain a player power called the Spirit Boon. Many of them unlock waypoints in the zones to help you get around. 3 of them per zone, and they give 100 renown each, so they're easily the most time-efficient thing you can do to complete the renown grind. The next thing are dungeons. These are good. There's like 20 or more of them in each zone. They give 30 renown each. Unlike the Altars of Lilith, these are actually gameplay. You're playing the game, getting lots of XP, good chance at items, using your abilities, none of the things you do for the Altars of Lilith. nobody's mad about doing dungeons to unlock Renowned, even if the grind is slow. The next way would be side quests. These are actually pretty fun. If you don't just mash through the dialogue, there's lots of good lore or interesting storylines to follow. They only give 20 Renown, but many of these can be completed in only a few minutes. Several of the quests in each zone require you to do dungeons, meaning you can kind of double dip on your Renown rewards. The actual rewards from the quests themselves are pretty pissed though. They're pretty bad. More than once I've received like just one veiled crystal, which is so bad. I feel like I get 1 to 3 for every elite I kill. You're really just doing the quest to either experience the gameplay or get the renown. Discovering areas is really simple and easy. They only give 5 renown for each area discovered, but you'll pretty much just do this while farming the altars, so it's kind of just free renown on top of that. And then unlocking the waypoints is something you're going to want to do just to get around the world. The world is massive, so you're going to want to be able to fast travel as much as possible. Following the story will get you most of the waypoints, doing the strongholds will get you nearly the rest, and you should be all caught up. The grind takes like a super long time hours-wise, and rewards like the Obols have no place being here, to be honest. Obols for 500 renown grind is terrible. The Paragon points are extremely powerful at any place in the game, whether you just hit level 50 or in your 70s or higher like I am. 4 Paragon points is huge. That being said, I got all the way to where I am without finishing it yet. I'm 3 out of 5 right now. I hit 60 before I even started the renown grind. I even beat world tier 3 with only 4 potions. That said, I did get carried like all good content creators. I have extreme concerns about the way things will work for the seasons when it comes to renowned. I just don't see people enjoying farming altars every season, and I expect this renown games themselves to be boosted during the season. There's actually supposed to be like a live stream or discussion online tomorrow for them to talk about it, so keep a lookout for that. Still hopeful. Concerned, but hopeful. All that's left to talk about is the endgame. Like I said, the only other Diablo I've ever played was D2. I played it before D2R came out, and since then I played a few hundred hours of D2R. This means I don't know what D3 endgame looks like. I've seen a friend play it once and that's it. Currently, D4 endgame is farming the shit out of whatever dungeon gives the most XP per hour, resetting it, and then doing it again for a few days until Wowhead makes a post about it and Blizzard nerfs it and then finding a new one. Obviously, you're still looking for like GG bis items with all the perfect rolls and stuff like any other game like this. Compared to D2, I actually like the variety of stuff you can farm while you're pushing to level 100 in this. Even with terror zones, you just have so much more freedom in D4. Nightmare dungeons should be the endgame. It's a scaling system with affixes like mythic dungeons in WoW. The problem is, Nightmare dungeons don't have enough mob density, drop enough loot, they're just not efficient enough. The Nightmare dungeon rewards should scale with sigil level, so that when you're pushing higher and higher sigils, you're getting exponentially more XP. This would promote pushing higher and higher sigils, which seems like it should be the infinite in-game scale. For my final thoughts, I saw some people complaining that D4 is a boring game where you just walk around and click all the buttons all the time. And yeah, that's what Diablo is. D2, 70% of the players just play Cold Sword and just moat trick Mephisto with Blizzard, and yet people have been playing that game for 20 years. D4 is a great game because it's incredibly fun. The buttons feel good to press, the player gets to feel powerful mowing down a bunch of little demons. It's mostly mindless fun while you keep spinning the loot slot machine and hoping to hit it big. It's a winning formula that preys on the addictive mind, and I love it. Talking about the launch, it was honestly impressively smooth. Don't get me wrong, the launch still had lag, it still had several server drops and problems that just killed hardcore characters outright. It was still not amazing, but compared to many games in the industry, it was good. Just because the industry should be better doesn't mean we shouldn't praise Blizzard when it does better. As a last side note, the horse sucks ass. It's clunky, weird, gets stuck on everything, has a 45-second timer if you get demounted by enemies even if you're just lagging out in the open world. It's better than no mount, and mine looks like a deer, and I love him. All in all, D4 obviously is not a perfect game, and as time goes on, more and more things that will need fixing will reveal themselves as things always do. The more intimate you become with something, the more the magic fades and you see the flaws. D4 is a very, very good synthesis of the core ideas of Diablo into a fast-action dungeon crawler where player power and powerful players are the core idea of the main gameplay. 8.5 out of 10. Very, very good.